Welcome to In the Margins, where we spark connection through stories. I'm your host, Laura Lynn Donahue, and each week I invite guests to step outside the lines and into the margins with me. You'll hear the untold stories, the stories of risk and reward, of triumph and trial, and everything in between. Thanks for joining me. Let's dive in. Wow, I had such a joyful conversation with today's guest, Julie Tully. She is full of life, and we quickly found common ground talking about the struggles of perfectionism and people pleasing. We talked about the importance of empathy and so much more. Julie is an award-winning author of Dispatches from the Cowgirl. She is the spouse of a recently retired naval officer, and she served as an unofficial diplomat across the world. Let's welcome Julie Tully. Julie, welcome to In the Margins. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Laurelyn. I'm thrilled to be here.
Great, great. Well, you have lived a very interesting life. I read your first book, your memoir, Dispatches from a Cowgirl, right?
Yep, Dispatches
Yeah.
from the Cowgirl, yes.
From the Cowgirl, yes. I read it a while ago, but it was really, really good. I don't know if you ever get the feedback that it feels sort of like a fairy tale-ish or a novel, just because some of the experiences are so out of the ordinary.
I have received a lot of feedback like that. And it's actually one of the reasons that I decided to write Dispatches from the Cowgirl is that I had been writing vignettes back home to family and friends about my life overseas, specifically in Africa with my husband and our son, and sending these vignettes back to family and friends. They're like, oh, your life reads like a story. You should write a book. And so it's not as if I tried to live my life that way. It's just what happened.
Of course.
And even now, Dispatches is celebrating its 3rd anniversary here very soon. And I am still receiving the same comment that people will say, oh my gosh, this is like a novel, not like a memoir.
Well, it's very well done.
Thank you.
And recently, I have enjoyed reading some of your Substack entries. The most recent one you wrote had this quote that I really liked, it from Mary Bly, who's an author. Dogs come when they're called. Cats take a message and get back to you later.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And as somebody who's had both animals as pets over time, yes, that's true.
Now would be a good time for the cat to appear on your shoulder.
That is also true for those who are watching this. I've warned Laura Lynn that I could have a cat jump up.
That would be great. So you describe yourself as the cat because just of some quiet time that you hadn't connected with your friends. And just tell us a little bit about that kind of stepping away and maybe regrouping, the silence, what you were doing in that space.
So yes, and it was funny because I love dogs, I love cats, but I really have an affinity toward cats. And my life has been very busy for the past 3 years. And I haven't had a lot of downtime. It's been really on the go, having lived overseas for 2 decades and then to move back to the United States. It's a different pace of life. There were a lot of things going on in my personal life and my professional life that just kept me constantly on the go. About 3 months ago, I decided, it just came to a head, and I didn't really realize that I had enough, but I started getting quieter and quieter and pulling back and telling friends that I didn't have time to go for a coffee. I didn't have time to go out and have a drink with them. And I was really finding myself withdrawing and staying home where it's quiet and peaceful. And one of my dear friends said, you're like a cat. And he told me, he said, because cats will give you all their love and attention, and they love you and they hug on you and they adore you. And then they walk away and ignore you for a while until they're ready to come back. He said, you're like a cat. He said, in the best possible way, mind you, not that I told him, I said, you know what? That was the nicest thing he could have said to me, and that is really what I've felt like is that I've being a cat owner myself, life gets very loud, and I have a very public persona that people think that I'm an extrovert, and I am not. I'm an
Yeah.
introverted extrovert. So when it gets too much, I go into myself, into my head, into my quiet space, and it's been a very lovely 3 months, and now I'm ready to come back out, and I think it's just you see it quite often, especially with writers, that that is just something we do.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, being compared to a cat is better than maybe a hermit, which
It
I
is.
guess or
Yes. He could have told me that I was a recluse and something like that, but in the kindest possible way, he referred to me as a cat.
oh, well, I think that's a great story, and it was a great entry in your Substack. How do you
Oh,
like
thank
writing
you.
for Substack, just as an aside? It's,
I love it.
yeah.
That is how I started in my writing career. Like I mentioned, my
Mhm,
first book, Dispatches, began as vignettes home. So they were really stories home about my life living in Africa as the trailing spouse of a military diplomat and living in some place that was so vastly different than where I was from and how I was raised.
mhm,
And so because of the time frame, we weren't allowed at that time to really use social media to share stories and stuff. And I chose to revert to writing letters and I sent those home via email and they started out as 500 to the occasional 1500 word vignette.
mm,
And I became very comfortable with that as a storyteller. It was like, this is kind of my sweet spot. I know how to do this. And I did it for 10 years and then eventually turned those into a book. But I found in the last like year and a half, about a year and a half ago, I was missing that format and I was missing that ability to connect on a very, picking a topic and writing about it in a very concise manner and putting it out into the world. And so Substack is just, it came along at the right time for me and I
yeah,
love doing it.
yeah.
I'm back where I began.
That's great, that's great. It's a great platform. We'll direct some of our listeners to follow you on Substack.
Thank you.
Yes. I think I'll have to be a paid subscriber because I would like to see some of the extra bonus content.
Well, yeah, and I mean that is the beauty of Substack is I decided to start writing on Substack for free, and so all of my written posts are free. But I had a few friends that said, we realized Substack you can pay people for it, and they started just very kindly offering to do a paid subscription. And me being the people pleaser that I am,
Oh, I don't know anything about that.
I could not, with good conscience, could not allow them to pay for my writing without giving them something in return. I thought, "Oh, what do I do? What do I do?" So for paid subscribers, I give them an audio bonus where I come on for about 5 minutes and talk about a topic similar to the one that I'd just written about. So it's fun.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I thought it was very creative
Thanks.
to do it that
But
way.
it's definitely that people pleaser. You know,
Yeah.
if you're gonna support me,
I
I'm
know
gonna
it
give you
well.
something.
Right. If you don't mind, there was another entry that I enjoyed just called Rediscovering Home. And it's when you went back to the Sierra Nevadas, where you grew up,
Yes.
um, for
Yes.
a book conference, I believe it was.
Mhm. It was a
And
book
just
talk, yeah.
a book talk, the experience of going back to what was home, but then didn't necessarily feel like the home you remembered when you got there. What was
It's
that like?
ugh, it's a lot.
Sure.
So I come from a lifestyle and an area that one, it is a personality in and of itself. Um, but also my family has very deep roots where I am from. I'm part of the fifth generation, if that gives you a little bit of a timeline, but my family has been there for going on 150 years and really part of the community. And growing up, people knew who I was. It wasn't a huge town, it was a smaller town. But because my family had been there for so long, everybody knew everybody else. I like to compare it in some way when people don't understand what that's like. I said, it's kind of like growing up in a Hallmark movie set or Gilmore Girls where everybody knows everybody.
Right.
So growing up, if I walked around town, even if they didn't say so, they probably knew who I was.
Yeah.
And we were always, my mom and dad always reminded my brothers and I that just remember people know who you are. Remember who you are when you're going out. Don't do anything, that's going to bring, horrible attention to you. Like, don't do
Right.
anything bad. So, so I grew up in an area where I had a personality that it was born before I was.
Hmm.
And when you are from an area and you are known, and then you go back after being gone for so very long, and you've changed because I've been gone for so many years and I'm not the person that people think I am anymore. But yet that place and sometimes the people in the place will hold you in amber. Like you're one of those wonderful little bugs that have been sealed into an amber shell and you should still be the same. And you also in turn view them as that they should be the same. And it's these two ideas that, all of a sudden collide.
Sure.
And you
Yeah.
realize that home may not be the place that you remember and you may not be the person they remember. And how does that reconcile itself? It's a lot. For me, it's something that I understand very deeply, and I'm constantly a student of it because it fascinates me living as an expat for 2 decades. The concept of identity and belonging is really, really important to me. So, going home and writing about rediscovering home is just something I have to do. And I think that a lot of people, whether they've had an experience like mine or not, can relate to that. So it's that old saying, you can't go home again.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Would you say, well, earlier you talked about being a people pleaser, which I'm very familiar
Yes.
with. Are you also a perfectionist in that
Mhm.
people pleasing style, would you say?
No, I have a type A personality. I tell people all the time, I'm a hot mess. On
And
a
have
good
you
day,
always
I'm a
been a
hot
hot
mess.
mess?
I think that perfection, while some things indeed you need to strive for perfection, I think that at the same time, perfection is like the antithesis of what we should aim for. Because the beauty really comes in the imperfection, the failures. If you can fail, you can learn. So striving to be perfect all the time, which I did when I was very young. I was that people pleaser that would the gold star on my paper. I wanted my teachers to say that I was the best. I was the best little that day because that's who I was. But over the years, I've realized that that is not where we become who we're meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like how you put that. Perfectionism, I think, breeds distance and
Yes.
vulnerability draws people closer and just not being perfect or acting
Yeah.
like we're perfect. Yeah. Wow. So when you were seen as a young child walking down the streets of home, people saw you as the girl who did
Oh yeah.
everything right. And yeah.
Absolutely. The good girl, the good student. I may not have looked perfectly pulled together that day, but I was always presentable and
Hmm.
happy, and I didn't have bad days when I was out in public.
So as you've grown and changed and learned, just thinking about that type of external personality or observance from people from a distance or even close to you, if you were to describe yourself now, obviously you would not use the word perfectionism, but you might use
No,
people pleaser occasionally. Like, is that it's an occasional
I am
default?
learning to not be a people pleaser. I am trying to tell myself.
Well, I think that's good. And I think it's important to, well, in a sense, stand up for ourselves. Just
Yes.
as recently, I had someone offer me some more responsibilities at my job. And I was looking at the list, and I mean, it was just so much. And I just thought, I can do all of this. And then I said, but I don't want to. So I just said, I can do these things, but not these. I don't want to do these. I've done that. I don't want to drive an hour somewhere. I don't want to do your social media, whatever it was. Just, I think it's taken me a long time to get to a place where I felt comfortable or that I could own that. I can do it. And the perfection or the people pleaser in me wants to do that all for you, but it's to my detriment if I choose to do it that way.
I completely relate with you. And I know that social media and current societal culture will say, oh, that's because, myself, I'm a woman of a certain age. And so I'm pushing back and I'm finding my feet in
Right.
this next act of my life. But I don't believe that at all. I think that it holds true for men as well. I know a lot of, and maybe it is the certain age, but I know a lot of men and women around that have lived their life and that are moving forward into another time of their lives that are saying, we value ourselves too. So know what we're comfortable with, and we're going to push back a little bit and not try to be that perfect person all the time. The
Yeah.
person that allows everybody the comfort to ask so much of somebody else and not realizing that it's okay to say no sometimes. It is really okay to disappoint somebody.
Hmm.
They will get over it, but we keep so much in our head that, that culture and society has told us that you have to say yes. If you're going to get ahead, you have to say yes to be the good person. It's not a lot of it's in our head. And then even the external forces, that we can actually say it is okay.
Who was it? Anne Lamott, who said, no is a full sentence, is a complete
No is
sentence.
absolutely a full sentence, and it absolutely is. I heard her speak in person, and she said that, and I was, asking her a question about it, and she reiterated it, and it's like, that is 100% true. No is so a full and acceptable response.
So tell me, if you will, a little bit about what's coming up for you as far as your writings that are in the work.
Okay.
You have a new project coming up?
I do. I am now a full-time writer. My life revolves around writing. So writing my own work, and then also on the flip side, working with others on their work. And I couldn't be happier. For my
Mm.
own work, when I wrote Dispatches, I kind of thought that that would be a one and done.
So you were talking about, I believe you were talking about being a ghostwriter and then also currently on your own work.
Currently, I'm a full-time writer, whether it's my own work or it's working with others. I am a ghostwriter, I'm a developmental editor, I'm a book coach. I do
Mm.
so many things. I help authors with their marketing and kind of like what happens after a book publishes.
Mm. Mm.
And I love it. I love that this is my career. As far as what I'm working on personally, when I wrote Dispatches, I thought it would be a one and done. I
Mm-hmm.
thought, great, I'm going to publish a book and then I'll go back, and I didn't know exactly, this is a few years ago now, and I didn't know exactly what was next. But as I was going around and speaking about Dispatches and speaking in front of groups and having people read and respond and review the book, the number one question that I was asked was, well, what happened next? You left us on a cliffhanger. What happened next? And at first, when Dispatches first came out, I thought, well, I can't really tell you because literally this is what's happening next. But I realized that there was another book, and people were telling me as I was speaking, at one particular conference that I was speaking at, they said, well, there has to be another book. There has to be another book. We need to know what happened next. And so I sat down to begin basically putting out the skeleton of that book, of the bones of the book. What would it be? And in doing so, I realized that even I hadn't seen the story that was developing.
Mm.
And in order to tell what happened next, I have to tell what happens before. So as my husband so lovingly says, I am working on both the prequel and the sequel at the same time, but
Nice.
it'll all be one work.
Okay, wonderful. Do you have a working title or one that you want to share? If not, it's totally fine.
The working title that because I am a military spouse, newly veteran military spouse. My husband just retired. We
Yes,
have done a lot of
congratulations.
packing and unpacking, and so the title of the book that I work with is
Mm.
Unpacking.
Oh, I like it. I like that.
Thanks.
Is there a story that you're considering for this book or that you are telling in this book that you would share with us? Or is that too presumptuous?
At this time, I'm not telling anybody
Okay.
about what it's about.
Okay.
I will say that it is a departure from Dispatches.
Mm,
And
mhm.
for people who have read Dispatches, which is a true chronological memoir that's also memoir travelogue, the next book is not. It is a memoir, but it is a departure, and it's an adventure to write, I'll put it that way.
Mm. Wow. Well, that's great.
But
I'm looking forward to
let
it.
me,
Okay.
like I said, to tell the story forwards, I have to go backwards. And
Mm.
so people are going to meet the very young version of me in this book.
Wonderful. The perfectionist,
Exactly.
the people pleaser.
Yeah.
Good. Good. Well, I look forward to meeting her. She can meet my younger self. We probably would have been good friends. So, with you've got your book space, you've got being a ghostwriter for others, you've got your Substack. I know that you also write for magazines or journals, published journals that are out there. Is there are there any stories, or is there a story that you haven't found a place for yet?
As I was talking about earlier about going home and how society and our culture, how we hold images of home in our mind and stuff, that
Mm,
had been one that hadn't been out there
mm,
in my mind that
mm,
I'd
mhm.
been talking about. But that's what I am writing now.
Great.
So honestly, I'm pretty much an open book with what I write. I
Hmm.
don't put a lot of parameters on topics or themes. Yes, I'm a memoirist. I'm a nonfiction writer. I share my life with the world. There is a part of me that is entirely private that will never see the light of day because that is my private life. It doesn't mean that there's some deep dark secrets because that's not it. It's just that when you stand up in a crowd, you've got a couple of hundred people in a room listening to you talk about your book that
Mm.
you've previously written, and they know details about your life, and they start asking you things, and you're like, how did you know that? Oh wait, I wrote about that.
Yeah.
It's that moment that there's as there is with anybody that has any part of their life in the public eye, or just anyone, any human being, there's part of them that they will never share with somebody else.
Yes, I agree. When you said that about the feeling of having someone say, "Oh, yeah, I read that about you." I released a memoir, and I'm in a newer area, for the last 3 years and been making friends, and I have run out of stories to tell them because they read my book.
I completely understand that.
It's just, "Oh, yeah, you already know that." So,
Yes, but
that's
then
a
that
r
gives you the opportunity to be the listener and say, "You tell me about you."
Absolutely, I agree.
I honestly, I get, and I'm sure you can understand this. I get people all the time that say, I they'll talk to me and they'll start telling me parts of their story, and I'm saying, "That's fascinating. Your life could be a book." "Oh, no, no, no. It couldn't be a book. My life is nothing like yours." And it's like, actually, the fascinating things about humans is that it's how we tell our stories and what we choose to believe is worthy, and sometimes
Mm.
people don't think that their own story is worthy enough when it is.
I completely agree with you, and I think I was probably in that camp for a while, just thinking, "Why would someone want to read my story?" But then recently, I spoke to someone who really felt unworthy,
Yeah.
didn't feel like they had the right qualifications or the right awards or, big T trauma, if you will.
Yeah.
Just and my heart hurt for that person. And even with encouragement, I could feel the reflection of self-doubt that kept coming. And, maybe that's even a good segue just to when you talk to audiences and when you come away from a conversation, what What do you want someone to feel as an impact? When I talked to Julie, I came away with this. Or do you have a reflection in that direction?
I do.
Mm,
Because so many people say, "You've lived such a fascinating life, and
mm,
you've taken us into a part of the world that we've never been. I could never have done what you did." And I
mm,
said, "I'm no different than you. I came from, a background in a place where I would have been the same person saying, 'Oh my gosh, I could have never done that.'" And what
mm,
I want people to take not only from my stories about, my personal stories in my book, but also in working with other storytellers to tell their stories, empathy
mm, mm,
and the universality of our stories. And when we share our stories, even though somebody will walk up to me and say, "I could never have done what you did. I could never have lived like you did or gone through the things that you've gone through." In their mind, what they're saying is there's a little bit of them that connected with what you said.
mm,
And they're putting themselves in that position. They're putting themselves in your shoes for that moment and saying, "I could never do that." And I think, well, but you've already taken what I've said or what I've written and seen yourself in my shoes. And so even if you think you couldn't do it, at least you understand what I went through. So there's this
mm,
empathy that's going with the stories, this empathy that goes back and forth.
mm,
And the more that we understand each other and the more that we can have this empathy, if that is my gift to the world, if that's what I can give back, then I'm good. I'm all good. And
yeah.
having lived in so many other cultures all around the world where I didn't fit in, I did
Mm,
not fit in. And I'm talking about is something as benign as England.
mm,
I may have been able to dress and look like them, but the minute that I opened my mouth or a mannerism or something, they said, "Well, you're an American, or you're basically you're not one of us." But then that was a chance for me to tell my story and for them to say, "Oh,
mm,
here's this woman that doesn't belong here. We're going to pull her in." And so
mm,
it's this empathy of sharing our stories. And whether, if you never have the chance to live outside of your community or outside of your culture, simply talking to somebody else next to you, they've walked a different path. And so that takeaway of listening and understanding others simply because they're different from you. That's what I want people to take away.
yeah, I love that. Um, I like the imagery of a listener, quote, stepping into your shoes, because I understand that analogy. You're thinking of yourself in that position and no, I could never do that, but you've put yourself there. I like
Well,
that visual.
here's the one. I was speaking to a group of educators, and it was a very large audience, and they were educators from all grade levels in the United States, predominantly elementary school, all women. And I kept getting asked, what was it like to raise a child overseas? And
Mm,
especially in places that were not entirely safe all the time.
yeah,
And I looked at him and I thought, well, I could give them this long explanation what it was like to raise a child in certain unique situations. But I said, the same as it was like for you to raise a child if you have a child, because I said, I've never raised a child in the United States. So
yeah.
it's I said, "There's a universality." I said, I woke him up, I fed him, I got him to school. It's yeah, but at that point, the audience understands, "Oh, if you find yourself in a situation, you go with that situation." And so that literally putting them into my shoes where I told them, "What's it like to raise a child in the United States?" And they look at me like, "Well, obviously." And I thought, but that's the same question. We have this mutual understanding. I know that they had to do certain things. Well, I had to do the same certain things.
Mm,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, speaking of shoes, I think I'll have to bring up cowboy boots.
Yes, yes,
Do you still wear cowboy boots?
all the time. All
Yeah.
the time. I am the product of, growing up. My formative years were in the 1980s. And so I have a love of not only my cowboy boots from growing up on a ranch and being a rancher's daughter and that culture, but I also have a love of other fashion. I happily can be both. So yes, I have cowboy boots. I wear them all the time.
Yeah,
Um, they go into my world, but they are not solely who I am.
sure. Do you happen to have a story off the top of your head that the boots you were wearing became the subject of your conversation with someone that you were meeting for the first time or in another
Oh
culture or
gosh.
country?
Yeah, actually, here's a good one. I wasn't allowed to tell this story until recently, and that's a military thing for security purposes. But when we were living in Africa, my husband was out of town. He was traveling, and a friend of ours was doing his work in the military side. It's a very diplomatic world that we lived in, and it's a lot of diplomacy and not a lot of what most people think the military does. And a lot of the diplomacy of it was to get, relationships built with people so that we could work together. Here we get back to this empathy and understanding and communications. And my friend called me and said, I know your husband's out of town, but we have an empty seat at the table. One of the guys who's coming, his wife doesn't feel well. Can you please come? This is a really important person that we're trying to build a relationship with. And I said, fine. I just fed my son for the evening. It was late. I was tired. And I said, I will come. I'm going to wear my boots. I'm already, I need to be comfortable. I'm not going to get dressed up. I'm going to wear my boots. And he's like, I don't care. Just come. And so I go to a dinner and I'm sitting there and I end up sitting next to the person that they're trying to build the relationship with, who is from another country, different culture. And this person is wily, not in a bad way, but just didn't open himself up to working with other countries, was very hard to get contacts with, hard to get any type of connection with. And I sat down next to him, we're having dinner, and I at one point I kind of pushed my chair back and he saw my boots and he looks down and he goes, "Are those cowboy boots?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "They're real." And, two different languages going on here. So I said, "Yes, they're absolutely real." And he said, "Well, why do you wear them?" And I said, "I wear them because they're who I am." I said,
Mm.
I grew up on a ranch in California, in Northern California. And he, much to the chagrin of everybody there, turns in his chair to face me. And that was it. I had his attention for the rest of the night because he had a connection to that. And he said,
Yeah.
"Where I'm from, I love that." He said, "I love your Western culture. I love your, who you are and what you do." And he said, I have cattle and I have a horse and I ride them and I dream of being like, John Wayne, basically."
Yeah, sure.
And he, for the rest of the evening, that was it. And my boots are what created that connection. And from then on out, we had a relationship with this gentleman that we were able to actually work with him and identify with him. And he was willing, through his connection with me, with my boots and my culture, was willing to
Yeah,
work with us.
yeah.
So there's
Wow.
your story
That's
about a
a
pair of
great
cowboy
one.
boots. Totally unexpected and still one of my favorite things that ever happened to me.
Wow, that's a wonderful story and, such good visuals too. Well, I have really appreciated having you on, and I just think as we kind of wrap up, with "These boots were made for walking."
One of my favorite songs of all time.
Mm, I know that you answer this in your Substack at the end, but this is a question that I like to ask
Okay.
on in the margins. We are going to curate a playlist, watch list, listen to list, so to speak, from each of our guests. And would you share with us what you're reading, what you're listening to, and what you're watching, if you have something for each of those categories?
Absolutely. I'm a media junkie.
Mm.
My background's public relations and communications, so media of all type I'm constantly consuming. So what am I reading right now? Right now I am reading The Correspondent by Virginia Evans.
Me too.
Are you really?
Yeah.
The irony. I started reading it the other day, and I am just absolutely enthralled with them.
Yeah. Good one.
You throw me an epistolary novel any day, and I'm there. So
Mm, mm.
that's what I'm reading. And I will say, yes, that's what I'm reading. I usually have anywhere from 3 to 5 books going at a time. Let's see what I'm watching. Well, it's Great British Bake Off season, and having lived in England for a while and considering it one of my many homes, every year my family and I sit down and watch the Bake Off, and it's a ritual, and it kind of takes us back to one of our homes when we watch it. So it's a special time of year for us.
Ah, great.
And what I'm listening to, what am I listening to these days? I have very eclectic tastes in music, but I am listening to the new releases of the Last Dinner Party. They are a female band out of England, and they have a new album coming out, so I'm listening to the singles that have been released off of that album. And I'm
Okay.
also listening to the new Florence and the Machine single that's
Ooh,
coming too. I'm a huge
okay.
Florence fan.
Yes, I love her. Well, I'll have to, what was the name of the group from England? I'm gonna write it down.
The Last Dinner Party.
The Last Dinner Party. What a great name.
Yeah, it is. Well, that was it was one of those things. I thought, I have to know more about that band. That name
Yeah.
says it all. So, yeah,
Yes,
that's
yes, it
that's
does.
that's what I'm into right now.
Well, that's great. I so appreciate it, and I've really enjoyed our time together. It's been
I have
really, really
enjoyed
nice.
this.
I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it, and thank you for sharing the importance of empathy. I think that's really something, a good nugget to walk away with.
That will be, if there's something that I will fight tooth and nail for,
Mm,
that I believe in wholeheartedly, it's that.
yeah, yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you again for being here, and I'll look forward to your next book coming out.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm really enjoying writing this one. It's a lot of work, but I'm enjoying it. And thank you, Laura Lynn, so much for inviting me to be on.
Absolutely. That's a wrap.
Awesome.
You've been listening to In the Margins. If this episode spoke to you, the best way you can support the podcast is by following, liking, and sharing it with someone who needs to hear it. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. And if you'd like to connect, I'd love to hear from you at podcastinginthemargins@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and remember, some of the best stories are found in the margins.